Colorado lawmakers announced on Thursday a major compromise surrounding the hospital provider fee. The fee will be reclassified, replacing a cut of over $500 million of hospital funding. But the bill includes a tax break for small businesses, road construction funds, and adjustments to Medicaid copays. David, this has been described as a capitulation from Republicans in some quarters, and in some quarters say they actually made out like bandits in the negotiations with Democrats. What do you feel?
Well, it's the soft bigotry of low expectations compared to how the U.S. House Republicans did in that ridiculous budget deal with the Democrats, where the score was about 95-5 on who got what. The Colorado Republicans came out much better. That's more like a 70-30 deal in favor of the Democrats. So they're 6 times better negotiators than their congressional counterparts. The whole thing is, if we followed our state constitution, unconstitutional. The Taxpayers' Bill of Rights says that we have limits on the growth of government spending, except when you ask the taxpayers. Then, of course, you can grow it increase as much as you want when the taxpayers say so. But enterprises don't count. So if you have the municipal golf course gets less than 10% of its money from general taxes, it gets its income by charging people to pay golf, renting out its banquet room, things like that. You can call that an enterprise, and so you take the golf course revenues outside of the city budget. That's fine, and that's what's in the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. This hospital provider fee is not something like that, where people are paying a some kind of actual enterprise for a service. It is simply a tax that is used for social welfare purposes, and putting it off budget is a violation of the text of our Constitution, but it's not a violation of how the Colorado Supreme Court has aggressively nullified much of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights by basically saying, oh, whenever the legislature calls something a fee, like the fee for, if the rec center raises its price for towel rentals from 50 cents to 75 cents, you don't need to ask the voters. And so we can move this out of the budget by calling it a fee instead of tax revenue. And the Colorado Supreme Court says, oh, anytime the legislature says that's a fee, that's conclusive. So if the legislature says, I am actually a tall, beautiful Eskimo woman, by the Colorado Supreme Court, well, since the state legislature said so, it must be true. And this is a fee in that same kind of sense.
Eric, you've been asked to follow a lot of random points that David might make, whether it be a French philosopher or a Latin American dictator, but tall Eskimo woman is going to be a brand new one for you, so good luck with this. I'll ask you this question. We're seeing conservatives having a both good and bad week when it comes to Tabor. The lawsuit came through that, actually the lawsuit was dismissed. That was against Tabor, so that was a victory. But in this, a lot of folks who backed Tabor are saying this was just another problem, or another way to get around it. What do you think at the end of the day this is for Colorado when it comes to the budget?
I think, given the cards the legislature was handed this year, it is a salvage operation on this session. I mean, this session was going nowhere. It is a pretty comprehensive and massive compromise. As with any compromise, there are plenty of Democrats who are upset that they gave away too much, and there are plenty of Republicans who think they gave away too much. Maybe some people were reading Donald Trump's Art of the Deal, but it is, it was a deal here, and both sides had to put some real skin on the table here. I don't know what we're going to do for topics around this table now if somebody takes hospital provider fee, which is obviously an eye-glazing term, away from us, but maybe that issue finally goes away here. I think the real point, Dominic, is it points to, we're so fixated in this state and in this country on the red-blue divide. But there are other political divides as well. And there is a real urban-rural divide as well. And this was the rural part of Colorado really asserting itself, and particularly asserting itself within the Republican caucus, where obviously they have much more influence than they have within the Democratic caucus, and saying that their needs were not being served by some of the rigid ideology that a lot of urban or suburban Republicans were espousing and the lines that they were drawing. So this was, to my thinking, significantly a victory for the rural lobby in the state and for rural Colorado.
Justine, we talked about the Republican point of view. Give me the Democratic point of view. Did Democrats give too much up for this deal?
Personally, I don't. I think that it was a good compromise. I think that we spend a lot of money. We have some of the highest expenses in the country for health care, and we don't have a large budget, despite what a lot of people think. I think that we have to do the best that we can with what we have, and for now, the compromise worked. I know a lot of people aren't happy, to give up a lot of what they wanted, but for now, I think that this was a good compromise.
Patty, what's the average Coloradan going to take away from this moment?
They're going to be relieved that they are not going to have to hear another hospital provider fee discussion or us attempt to explain it. If this deal goes through, I mean, the budget had already moved to Hickenlooper's desk, but this kind of fixes some of the problems that are in the budget. But we still have 4 days in which 3 days by the time this airs, in which things could get screwed up. Not only are we not going to be talking about the hospital provider fee, but it looks like the construction defect bill has gone through. We're not going to have to talk about that until we discover maybe it doesn't work, and that's going to be something we're really going to have to follow. But when you talk about optics, Eric's right on this. You went to the hospital, and they went to the hospital in Hugo, and you look at what it means to Hugo, not 10 miles from Lyman, to have a hospital, what the cuts would have meant to that hospital and the rural plains, and you could see that they were like, we don't care what you want to call it. It had passed before. Ritter had put the hospital provider fee in play years ago. Now it's worked this budget through. They're going to get their money.